Well, it is another volatile week for both investors and consumers with the back and forth of this war, the highs and lows of tech stocks, and the ups and downs, of course, of oil prices. The Dow rallied after a nearly 600-point drop yesterday to finish in positive territory today, up about 139 points there. The Nasdaq and S&P also finished up. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map brought to you by FinViz, showing the top 500 stocks, showing a lot of green on the board today. Chip makers rebounded from a sharp sell-off earlier in the week, and oil prices dipped today after surging over war concerns yesterday. Let's bring in CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent Kelly O'Grady to help us sort all of this out. We saw this at the start of the war with Iran, Kelly. One day the markets were down, the next day they were way up. Can you explain why this happens? Is it tied to gas prices?
So there's a couple of different things here that are going on with the market. So one is the AI trade that we've talked about before. You mentioned the chip makers were down earlier in the week. I mean, part of that is due to the uncertainty with the war, but part of that is a bigger question around demand for chips as this AI race develops and investors try to figure out who's going to win, how much appetite is there going to be for this. So that's one part of it. Another part of it is this question of, are we going to get into a large-scale conflict again? You know, right now it's teetering. It's, well, are we going to come back to the table? You know, we're trading strikes back and forth, and whether we were talking about tariffs or we were talking about war, we would constantly say, Liz, right? Investors hate uncertainty, and that's where you see some of this back and forth. And by the way, when certain stocks lose a bunch because there's a big sell-off, then you sometimes see a swing back the other way because investors who are looking past all of this uncertainty say, hey, well, this is a pretty good buying opportunity because that stock that I'm really interested in or this sector is priced lower than it was before. And then the oil prices of it all, you kind of see a opposite effect. When oil prices go up, the market tends to go down, and then oil prices came down today because there's the hope that maybe there could be negotiations, and the market rebounded. Broadly, it is tied to gas prices because if you think that gas prices are going to tick up because oil prices tick up, then you're worried about an inflation problem. And so, you know, those are sort of all of the different components. It is never one specific thing that is driving the market, but that broader sell-off yesterday and the rebound today is driven by this question of war, of oil, and then ultimately gas prices. Yeah.
That's great perspective, Kelly. I want to switch gears to some more tech news today. OpenAI just unveiled a new AI agent. They're calling it ChatGPT Work. How is it different than the earlier ChatGPT models? Who is this intended for?
So this is very much intended, as you would expect from the name, for companies, for enterprise clients. And this is really where the money is right now, because yes, you and I mostly engage with ChatGPT or Claude or any of these AI chatbots on a personal basis, but really where these companies are starting to monetize these big major investments that they've made is by selling it on a large scale to companies. And so ChatGPT Work is designed to take all sorts of data from apps and documents and reports and spit out presentations, Excel spreadsheets, even websites. Think about it. In my past life, I was a consultant, would have loved to have an AI bot create my presentation for me on PowerPoint. And so you can kind of see where this would be attractive for companies because they could employ or deploy this type of technology and then not have to have their human employees do as much. They could free them up to do other activities or maybe not even hire as many people. That is the idea from these AI companies, and specifically OpenAI is really trying to take market share from Anthropic's Claude Cowork. They've been very successful with Claude getting enterprise company clients, and this is definitely a run at that. The thing that OpenAI says that I think it was sort of the biggest one that jumped out to me is that this new iteration of their AI chatbot is much more conversational. You can speak to it, you can interrupt it, the AI can listen and talk at the same time, so it's more like having a real conversation versus some of the more halting interactions that we've had in the past with AI.
Sure, we've seen so many of these chatbots that you have to be able to say a certain thing to get a certain outcome. This may be a little bit easier. All right, Kelly O'Grady, thanks so much.